In this episode of Restore It, I'm going to carry on fitting out the new workshop and install the next piece of industrial equipment. Apologies for the delay on this episode, but that newest piece of equipment needed a bit more work to install than the others, but we got there in the end. This workshop build is taking a lot longer than I thought it would, but I guess that's always the case with this kind of thing. I could have made one really long episode, but it would have been months in the making, and I have too many people to thank for helping me out with this build. So to give you a quick recap, in episode 2 of the build I had a new roller door installed, Riley's delivered the new shop blasting setup, I installed some rigid airline, I repainted more of the floors and walls, and organised many tools and consumables. In one of the final shots of that episode, I mentioned the next piece of equipment had arrived just as I was finishing up. Well, that new piece of equipment is the new spray booth from Nuxen. This is something I've wanted ever since I started the channel. It's a Nuxen 3-phase open style spray booth which is produced by a company called JJB Corporation and is for sale on their website IndoorOutdoors.co.uk. I've left a link in the description if you want to go and check them out now, but I'll tell you more about this super interesting company a bit later on. This spray booth is produced not too far from my workshop and is exactly what I've been looking for. It was designed in-house by JJB Corp and is made from scratch using huge industrial laser cutters, hydraulic box and pan machines and powder coating booths which are also designed and produced by JJB. This Nuxen full-length open-style spray booth includes a powerful 3kW motor and a custom-built explosion-proof extraction fan which moves paint fumes and particles through the Binks filter, which complies with the PREN 779 standard and other European directives, straight out of the top of the booth, through 400mm spiral ducting and out of the workshop as 99% particle-free and 98% fume-free air. I can't wait to get this thing installed and test it out, but I'm just waiting for the ducting to arrive, so in the meantime I'm going to get on with the rest of the workshop. Firstly, I have a few more things to add to the storage wall, including these outer wheel arch panels which are super important for the E30 project. I'm also adding some more tools that will sit flush against the wall. In about 6 months or so I'll do an update episode on the workshop and this wall should look a lot fuller than it does now. Up next, I'm going to move things around so I can paint the next section of the floor. As annoying as it is doing it this way, it's the only way it can be done without leaving everything outside for a few days. Like I did on the previous section, I'm giving the floor a good clean before I put the paint down to give it the best chance of sticking. So that's one half of this section done. Once it's dry, I'll crack on with the other side. After last episode, I've still got a little bit of airline left over, so I thought I might as well make use of it by adding another outlet on the opposite side of the compressor. Before I do that, I just have a quick word from our sponsor, FanHome. FanHome is a new brand dedicated to developing super high quality, unique build-up models and collections of some of the best loved brands including Star Wars, Marvel, Back to the Future and many more. All of their models and collections are fully licensed, designed in-house and are completely original, meaning you won't find them anywhere else. I've had the pleasure of owning some of their models and collectibles and can say without a doubt that these are some of the highest quality models I've seen. The amount of detail and quality of each piece is really impressive. A lot of the components are metal and the finishes are spot on. It's almost like they've used a shrinking gun. The individual parts and the final model really do feel like mini versions of the real thing. With FanHome, you can now dive into the world of Fast and Furious, learning all there is to know about the movies we love, whilst enjoying 1:43 scale miniatures of the most iconic vehicles that we've seen from the movie franchise. All of their miniatures are fully licensed, unpublished and are faithful to the originals. They have detailed interiors, functioning steering wheels, rolling tyres and have been hand printed. This has to be one of the most detailed and most complete collections of F&F cars there is. Alongside the collection or assembly stages, you'll receive fully illustrated magazines which include detailed build instructions and a deeper look into your favourite brands and iconic vehicles from their past. To get started, all you have to do is choose your collection or build-up model and subscribe. The first package will contain 1 issue, the second package contains 2 issues and the third package onwards will contain 4 issues per month. As a subscriber, you'll receive a variety of brand-related gifts, including t-shirts, die-cast models, posters and more. And if you pay with PayPal, you'll receive a 1:43 scale model of the iconic off-road Dodge Charger from the 7th movie. To get started on this exclusive collection or any of their collectibles and build-ups, just click the link at the top of the video description today and get stuck in. Big thanks to FanHome for supporting the channel. Let's get back to the workshop. So this is what I have left over from the John Smith's kit, just enough to add one more outlet. Firstly, I'm going to swap this 90 for a T-piece and continue adding pipe along the right side wall. As the outlet for this blasting cabinet will always be connected to the cabinet, it'll be nice to have an outlet on this side as well so I can quickly attach air tools. I can now install the manifold, adapters and the quick release connector. If anyone knows where I can get some 1/2 inch 45-degree angled bits, please let me know down in the comments, because that would allow me to get some 1/2 inch quick release connectors, which I think would be better for airflow. Something I haven't really shown on the channel but I really enjoy doing is restoring bikes. I think I'll always have a bike in the projects list, so I'm going to install a wall mounting kit for this old Riley that I'm going to restore for a friend. This is quite a heavy bike, so I went for a 3-piece kit that supports both wheels whilst the pedal mount keeps the bike against the wall. All I have to do is drill the holes, add the brackets, and add the bike. Well, that was a bit sketchy, but it's on. Hopefully that holds. Moving over to this corner of the workshop, there's a few things to do. Firstly, I'm going to clear the area so I can clean and paint the walls. I'm going to redo all of the grey bit, fill in the missing piece, and also paint the floor where it hasn't been painted to build up a bit of a layer before putting the light grey down. With that done, I can now clean the white section and paint it. With that done, and it looking much nicer, this parts washer is going to look out of place in such a clean workshop. It's had 5 years of use, so I think it's time for a very quick and dirty cleanup for this old thing. That's the outside looking much better, but the inside is a different story. As I'm mopping up the leftover sludge, I'm finding a lot of rust. What I'm going to do is very quickly brush off as much of it as possible, treat it with Genelite's rust converter, and paint over it. Before I can treat the rust, I need to make sure it's completely dry, so I'm going to use a heat gun to get this done quickly. With all of the moisture gone, I can now apply the rust converter. I'm now going to let that do its thing for at least 3 hours before I paint over it. I'm using Genelite's anti-rust primer, which will act as another barrier against rust, before finishing with a red top coat. Whilst I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to do the same to the table and give the pump housing and internals a good clean. I left the pump running for about 10 minutes in some super concentrated degreaser to really flush out any contaminants. With that done and the primer dry, I can now brush and spray on the almost matching red top coat. It's not the best match, but it should protect it for a few more years at least. With the lid done, I can now move on to the bottom shelf and the table. I'm going to coat the inside of the tank with something different, but we'll come to that in a second. To give the tray a bit more of a chance, I'm going to add some leftover toolbox liner, which should help with scratches and therefore rust. With that done and the paint dry, it's almost finished. But the last thing I need to do is coat the inside of the tank with a hard-wearing epoxy primer that will last. This is a bit of a test, as I don't know if this particular epoxy primer will be up for the job, but I've got it on hand and I can always redo it if it doesn't last. I can now remove the masking tape, add the pump and brush back in and fill it up. And there we go, looking much better than before. Hopefully the paint holds up. The washing fluid is non-solvent based, but we'll see. Whilst I was doing the parts washer, I also set about bolting the press into the ground. It's only taken me around 5 years to find a place I definitely want it to go. Is that mental? So to do this, I picked up some small anchor bolts and started drilling the holes in each corner of the press, making sure everything was lined up correctly. With all 4 anchor bolts in and everything aligned, I can now add the nuts and tighten it down. Well, that's not going anywhere. I can actually pull on it properly now. I wish I'd done this sooner. I can now reattach the middle section after losing the metal rods that hold it in place during the move. These two are now ready to go, and the press is now more useful than it's ever been. Both of these hobby level tools will be upgraded when the time is right, but for now they should do just fine. Whilst I was getting on with that, the ducting for the spray booth arrived from AMS Ducting Supplies in the UK. I was in two minds about where I wanted the booth to go, but I eventually decided that here would be best, so that I could use this existing hole in the roof made by a previous business. AMS Ducting Supplies have played a crucial part in getting this spray booth installed. Having never done anything like this before, I got in contact with AMS, who were more than happy to help me out with my first proper ventilation setup. I had to change the plan a few times due to the height of the roof and the length of the ducting, but they were more than happy to swap over some parts and offered some well needed advice for a first timer like myself. With more than 30 years experience in the industry, AMS Ducting Supplies offer a wide range of high quality heating and ventilation products, including spiral, round and rectangular ductwork, fire rated ductwork, all kinds of fittings, deck tights, plastic ducting, volume control dampers and much more, all at very competitive prices. I really couldn't have done it without them, and they are now my go-to place for extraction solutions like this one. Big thank you to AMS Ducting Supplies for all of the help. If you need something like this, you can find them down in the description. I ended up having to use a 90-degree bend on top of the straight piece to get the height to clear the roof. I sent the cowl back and used this circular louver instead, which will keep the rain and birds out. I didn't actually get any shots of us installing the ducting, as there wasn't much to see and it took us a long time to get it all fitted and sealed properly. But as you can see, it goes straight up out of the workshop and into a 90-degree. I still have a few final touches to make to the inside, but I'll do them off camera as you're never going to see it anyway. So now that the filtered air is directed out of the building, I can now plug it in and test this Nukes and Spray booth for the first time. But before I do that, I just want to quickly tell you about the seriously cool company that produces these spray booths from scratch here in the UK. JJB Corp, whose flagship website is IndoorOutdoors.co.uk, produce pretty much everything you can find on their site. From its simple origins, selling railway sleeper brackets, they now produce a range of goods, from wine racks and log baskets, to pergola brackets and planters, to barbecues and pizza ovens, to animal feeders and parcel boxes, to an entire workshop storage range, all the way to industrial spray booths. They actually do all of this from one location, outsource very little, and they do it really well. JJB Corp use lean and 3S techniques to help them produce well over 1,000 different high quality products from their factory in Munford. They design them, cut them on their huge laser cutters, fold them, weld them, paint them and pack them before sending them straight to you, the customer. I just love the way this company thinks. The reason they now sell this spray booth, as well as these other ones, is because they needed one for themselves, and instead of just buying one, they designed and produced their own. As soon as they've thoroughly tested it and made any necessary changes, they offer them to the public and make them to order. The same goes for this Nukes paint prep station, this Nukes extractor, and this Megamax pegboard design and storage attachments that they use in every part of their factory. What these guys are able to do is seriously impressive, and I'm very glad I found them. I think you'll be seeing a lot more of these guys, as I plan to change over to the Megamax pegboard system and all of the cool attachments that come with it. So if you're looking for a spray booth like this one, railway sleepers for a pergola, or anything in between, make sure you check out IndoorOutdoors.co.uk by clicking the link in the video description. Big thanks to Indoor Outdoors for helping restore it out with the spray booth. Let's see how this thing performs. This old E30 part and top coat are just for the test. I'm pumping out way more paint than I usually would to see how it's going to handle it, and so far, so good. As with all of these machines, it is quite loud, so I think I'll get some sound deadening for the booth and the ducting to keep the neighbours happy. Overall, I'm super happy with this setup. It works as it should, and it only takes up a small amount of floor space. I now never have to mess around with a homemade spray booth and all of the setup that comes with it every time I want to paint. I cannot wait to try this thing out properly on the next project, but first, let's get this workshop finished. With the first half of the floor dry, I can now clean and paint the other. Since I've started putting it down as thick as I possibly can, the finish is actually quite good. I'm really cutting this down, otherwise we'll just be watching paint dry. But there we go, it's almost finished now, just one more section to do in the next episode. You can already see how dirty the first section is compared to the new one. This makes me want to buy new shoes for the workshop, but thankfully this paint cleans up really nicely. Just like the hydraulic press, things like the bench grinder, drill press and vise need to be bolted into the floor to really be able to use them properly. So what I'm going to do is recycle these I-beams I found in the old workshop into tool stands. I'm just trying to work out where I can put them before I cut the bottom and top plates to size and drill the holes to bolt each tool down. They'll look something like this once they're finished, only with mounting plates that fit the tool that's getting bolted to it. I think I'm going to have one here with a vise on it, so that I can fit long things on it without the workbenches getting in the way. Next episode, I'm going to cut these to size, weld them up, paint them and bolt them into the ground. This is the only organising I'm going to show you, as there's so much of it and nothing really changes on camera, but trust me, there's been a lot of this. I've had this Airfed mask and 3-stage filter from Spray Guns Direct for ages now, but I've never had a compressor that's up for the job. Now that I do, I'm going to start using both. I believe the air coming from the compressor is already breathable due to these two filters, but to make absolute sure it's safe, I'll run the mask through this A&I 3-stage filter as well. All I need to do is mount it on the wall and swap out any old fittings for new ones. With all of those fitted, I now have 2 outlets that are double filtered for air tools or spray guns, and one 3-stage outlet for breathable air. If I have enough spare, I'll hook this up to the blue line so it's ready to go as soon as the compressor's turned on. During the second episode, I tested the blasting cabinet from Riley's with very worn out glass media and a slightly worn out viewing screen, making it hard to see and the process takes longer than it should. That dusty glass media was also getting stuck on the side of the hopper, meaning the cycle wasn't complete. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of that glass media and remove any surface rust so I can add a fresh coat of epoxy paint to protect it and hopefully help with the friction that's causing the media to get stuck. Removing this glass media is a bit of a pain, as I can't just let it drain out of the bottom like I used to be able to in the Sealy cabinet, but I guess you can't have it all. You can see it's just dying to rust, but as this is inside of a blasting cabinet, it never really gets the chance to. Having said that, I'd rather it was protected and not on the edge of rusting all of the time. The paint is absolutely perfect behind the rubber, but about 90% of the non-protected area needs to be repainted. One of you posted a comment on the last episode, suggesting that I use stainless steel sheets cut to the sides of the hopper to prevent damage and help with moving the media down and into the pot. And I think this is something I'm going to do, but I'll have to leave that for later. With the glass in the hopper gone, I now need to get rid of the media that's still inside the pressure pot. To do this, I'm going to block the top of the pressure pot so no media can get back in, and hold my foot down on the pedal until only air comes out. It's so nice to be able to press one button, go over to the blasting cabinet and put my foot on the pedal and start blasting. It's so much less faffing than before. The only air leak I need to fix is this hose going from the outlet into the cabinet, and I think it's currently being held on with some twisted steel wire. I'll have to swap this out for a Jubilee clip. This air blast has a 7-litre pot, which in the industry is quite small, so I was quite surprised to see just how much media it can hold. I again removed all of it out of the top of the hopper, being careful not to remove the plug. With that done, I can now remove the rust using a Rolock metal prep pad at full power the entire time thanks to NC Air and the CPM 15. This compressor has made my life so much easier. If you're in the industry, I cannot recommend one enough. In just a matter of minutes, the rust is gone and I can clean the surface ready for paint. I'm using some 2-pack epoxy. It's the same stuff I used on the E30, as I have it on hand and I like that it's an off-white creamy colour, which should reflect the light a little bit better. I'm trying to put it on as thick as I can without letting it drip into the pot. This definitely needs another coat, as you can just about see through it. As I was watching the first coat dry, the final pieces of new equipment arrived, but we'll come back to that later on. With the first coat dry, I can now add the second. Again, I put it on as thick as I could, and now it looks really solid. This epoxy primer is super smooth to the touch, so I'm hoping it helps at least a little bit with the media making its way down to the pot, but we'll see. It now also looks much nicer in there as a result. I can now remove the masking tape and reinstall the table. So this is the new blasting media. Aluminium oxide. 2 bags of 60/40 grit and 2 bags of 70 grit. I want to try a few different grades to see how they perform in this new cabinet, but I think 60/40 is going to be my go-to for rust removal, and 70 can be used for things like Cerakote prep. In my search for new blasting media, I came across a company called Blast Spares Direct, and it turns out that these guys supply many different types of media in small and bulk amounts. They also have literally everything you can think of when it comes to shop blasting. I got in contact with Blast Spares Direct to inquire about media, and I learned more about shop blasting in one phone call than in all of my internet research put together. These guys know everything there is to know about shop blasting, and even hire out proper industrial scale compressors and pop blasters that put my new equipment to shame. The compressors they hire out start at 230 CFM and go up to 405 CFM, and the blasting pots start at 18 litres and go all the way up to 200 litres, which is 6 25kg bags of media. They have a blasting setup for pretty much any job. Not only that, they have everything you need when it comes to shop blasting, nozzles, hoses, grip valves, pop-up valves, pneumatic vibrators, you name it, they have it. After speaking with DJ from Blast Spares Direct, I learned about the pneumatic vibrators. So if the epoxy paint / stainless steel idea doesn't work out, I'm going to buy 2 vibrators, one for the pot and one for the hopper. Blast Spares Direct are now my go-to place for anything to do with shop blasting, and I can't recommend them enough. So if you need blasting media, cabinet or pot consumables, a super powerful blasting setup, or anything relating to shop blasting, make sure you check out Blast Spares Direct at the link below. Big thanks to Blast Spares Direct for all of the help. I'm going to start with the more aggressive 40/60 grit to see just how fast it can remove rust and old coatings. The glass I was using before had a Mohs hardness of 5 to 6, whereas the aluminium oxide has a Mohs hardness of 9, and it's also more dense, which means I can remove rust and paint much faster and the media will last a lot longer. As I'm pouring it into the hopper, the epoxy paint is doing a good job of keeping everything moving, but we'll see how it gets on when I actually get blasting. Another thing I need to change is the glass. Thankfully this is a pretty straightforward thing to do. I just need to unbolt the frame and remove it. I can now measure it and have a glass maker cut some 6mm laminated to size. And here it is. To make sure it doesn't get broken, blasting cabinet screens like this one are usually made from 2 pieces of 3mm thick sheets with a very thin piece of PVB in between. With it installed into the cabinet and some temporary protection added, visibility is almost perfect. But I think once I add the proper screen protector it'll be 100%, and as long as I change it regularly, visibility should no longer be an issue. I've just realised that 2 of the tube lights in the blasting cabinet aren't working, so I've ordered some new ones and will change them out when they get here. So finally it's time to test all of the changes, the new media, the new glass and the freshly painted hopper. I'm really running out of things to blast for the sake of it, so this is what I've got lined up for the test. Some rust, some paint and even some electroplating. As you can see, this is absolutely rapid. It's also so much easier to see, not only because of the new glass, but the aluminium oxide isn't adding to the dust like the old crushed glass was. It's absolutely addictive. My hands no longer come out of a 20-minute session feeling like they're about to fall off, and because it's so fast, I'd have to be doing a lot of blasting to be in there for that long. The temporary protection isn't working very well, so I'll do a small amount to show you what it's going to look like once the new film is on. It's so powerful, but the main thing now is to make sure I don't damage whatever it is I'm blasting. The results speak for themselves. These items took just a matter of minutes with no setup before and no cleanup afterwards. Just one button on the compressor and then just pressing the foot pedal on the cabinet. So that's the shop blasting cabinet pretty much up to scratch now. I'll see how it goes without the vibrators and without the stainless steel sheets inside the hopper for now, but if I do make a change, I'll make sure it goes in the update episode that's coming later on. Moving on to these E30 wheels, which since the move have become that kind of thing that are just in the way. So I've decided it's time to get one of those wall mounted wheel racks, as I've got plenty of wall space to work with. With that done, I can now very awkwardly attach it to the wall. This has actually been cut down quite a bit because it took me about 4 tries to get this thing attached to the wall. It was really awkward and probably a 2-man job. With it firmly attached, I can start adding the wheels. For those wondering, I'm going to have these wheels professionally powder coated when the time comes, because after visiting rolling rims and seeing the process firsthand from acid to oven, the job I did just doesn't compare. Considering I already have a video on the 1M's wheels, let me know if you'd like to see a professional restoration of these ones too. And there we go, it hasn't fallen down and destroyed the parts washer yet, so that's a pass in my eyes. As I was sorting through some stuff, I found some more smaller airline that I was also going to use in the old workshop, but never got round to fitting. So I've decided to add a few more outlets on this side of the room, just for now until NC Air come and do their thing. The good thing about this smaller kit is I have a load of 90° and T-pieces which make routing it very easy, and I can just make it up as I go along. I also have 3 of these manifold pieces which the water drain and quick connectors can attach to. I'm not sure if going from 22mm pipe to 12mm pipe is a good idea, but we'll soon find out. To join the two, I'm first swapping this 90° piece for a T-piece. I'm going to use these 4 pieces to adapt the size and the fitting. With all of those firmly connected, I can add it in and join the 2 pipes. So now when I turn the compressor on, the shot blaster is ready to go and the 2 outlets on this side of the room are also ready to go. When it comes to compressed air, this is the most organised I've ever been, but this is still nothing compared to what Northern Compressed Air are capable of. So moving on, I think I now know what LEDs I want for the workbenches. For these lower shelves I'm going with 2 day white strips, and for the top shelves I'm going for 1 warm and 1 cool strip. To keep the lower strips from overheating, I'm using these leftover shelf pieces as heat sinks and mounts. With those on, I can now add 2 strips to each workbench, and then I can wire them all up. As you can see, the current wiring for these LEDs is questionable at best, so instead of adding to this mess, I'm going to sort this workbench out first, and then redo the wiring for all of them, making sure they're all routed correctly. And there we go, it's all looking much neater, and I really like how I can see what's going on the bottom shelf. Even with the main lights on, half of which shine directly into the camera, the workbenches, spray booth and blasting cabinet are all well lit, which means I can work into the night if needs be. I do like a bit of mood lighting, so I'll definitely be adding more in the coming episode. I think I'm going to add more of these LED spotlights into the ceiling, and maybe a few lower hanging ones over working areas once I've used the workshop a bit and I can see what it's like. I definitely want to get rid of the wall mounted ones, or at least separate them from the ceiling light circuit, as I think that will help with episodes like the E30 restoration that aren't primarily filmed on a workbench. Before I forget, I want to see how well this floor cleans up, and I was thinking of the best way to do it, and I remembered that I have a steam cleaner which came with a floor cleaning attachment. I've sprayed degreaser down and let it soak in for a little bit before steaming. With a bit of degreaser, it's working well and the floor is coming up nicely. It looks like the 2 halves are different shades, but that's just because they're angled away from each other. The dirt is now gone and it's looking fresh once again. There is a bit of damage here and there from all the moving around of things, but I'll do that next time I know I won't be in for a few days. So this is all of the progress I've made in this episode, as there was a bit of a delay with the ducting, which was completely my fault for changing my mind halfway through, after the stuff for plan A had already arrived. The spray booth is in, the blasting cabinet is working well, the compressor is powering both flawlessly, the press and parts washer are ready to go, and the workbenches are all sorted and lit up. I've tested out sanding the top of one of the workbenches to get rid of 5 years of wear and tear, and it's come out really nice, so I'm going to do this for the rest of them in the next episode. I've decided that this workbench is going to be the one I use for restoring antiques, car parts and smaller things on, so I've cleared the pegboard to make more space and keep it looking clean. One change I'm already thinking about making is swapping the compressor over with this workbench. 1 so it's further away from the spray booth, and 2 so it's more central to the workshop. Thankfully, you guys convinced me to keep the compressor on its pallet so it's very easy to move. I just need to extend the socket and add some more pipe to the airline. In the next episode, I'm going to put the car lift back up in its new location. I'm going to cut, weld, paint and bolt down the new tool stands. The final major pieces of equipment are going to be built and installed, and I'm going to make a few final touches that really make it feel like my own. I now have pretty much everything I need for episode 4, so that should be with you soon, but I may have an actual restoration out before that episode, because that's just how it's working out. But as soon as the workshop is finished, you'll be seeing a lot more of me in your subscription list, and a lot more antiques and car part restorations, and not forgetting the E30 project either. I really can't wait to have it all finished and get back to restoring things. So that's all for this episode. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye for now.